Scott Brenner joins me from Washington. He's a former associate administrator at the FAA. The changes that are made, the more I read about them, they are not so much improvements or whatever, but they're exactly the sort of thing, putting right exactly the sort of things that should have been spotted in the testing process. No, this isn't just being clever with hindsight.
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree with that. I think what we have here is, unfortunately here in the United States, when something happens, our elected officials feel they need to act. And so right now they're responding to these crashes. They don't know what caused the crash. The FAA doesn't know what caused these crashes. Nobody but probably the Ethiopians and the Indonesians actually know what caused these crashes. And yet here we are coming up with all different ideas on how to solve a problem that may not be the solution to the real problem.
I agree there may be something else, but do you accept that it was, I would say, it was the wrong decision of the FAA not to ground the planes when everybody else was doing it? They had to be dragged kicking and screaming.
And I think I'm, probably the lone voice out here, but I still don't think there's enough evidence to ground these aircraft. Yes, you had two aircraft that crashed that were of the same model, that had a similar profile, but we still don't know why they crashed. With the Lion Air crash, which was the first one, we have an idea that it crashed because of poor maintenance. The second one, we don't know why it crashed. All we know is that allegedly the pilot, the main pilot in control, became nervous, turned it over to his co-pilot, who had around 200 to 300 hours of flight time. And remember, when these pilots are in these aircraft, they're only flying the plane about 10% of the time. So he's got 25 to 30 hours of flight time. It's handed over to him in a very dangerous situation, and the plane crashes. So I still don't know why. I don't think there's enough data out there to justify the grounding of these aircraft. And if you don't have the data to justify grounding, how do you have the data to justify putting them back up in the air?
The phrase that strikes me is that used by the Chinese authorities when they grounded the plane. They said it was out of an abundance of caution. Now, the FAA's cozy relationship with Boeing, or allegedly cozy relationship, the delegation, all the issues that you know about now. I'm not asking you to discuss or defend them. I'm asking you whether or not you believe the FAA's gold standard has now been tarnished.
I would disagree. I think there's probably a public perception out there that it might be, but I think we also have to look at what is the motivation of folks like the Chinese to come out so strongly and so early in grounding their aircraft. They do have the most of these aircraft. I think they have something like 200, but it's also a nation that's trying to get into the aviation business themselves. So for a long-term view, it doesn't really hurt the Chinese to start taking Boeing's reputation down step by step. Now, for the other countries, I was really kind of surprised because normally the FAA has a very good working relationship with these other civil aviation authorities, and yet I would be surprised if any of them could point to solid data that would justify the grounding of these aircraft.